Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting discussion topic to share with you guys. Today I want to talk about different classifications and terms for knives. This is going to be geared towards new people. If you have stumbled into different corners of the knife world, right? If you're new to this and you keep hearing terms like gentleman's knife, tactical knife, Midtech knife, high-end production knife, pocket brick, pocket jewelry, right? All this weird stuff that's kind of loosely defined and you're confused by it. I'm going to talk about what people mean when they say that, right? Some of these terms are much more factual than others, like have more of a specific definition, and other ones are super, super loose, right? To prove my point, if this is a day or two old, after I've talked about some of these, look down in the comments section. There's going to be people arguing about factually what certain things mean, right? And it's going to be, this or that. There's going to be different opinions down there. It's just going to be the case. There's going to be people down there saying, well, actually, gentleman's folder is classified specifically as this. No, I disagree. It's actually, you're going to see that, right? So that's my proof that that's the case there, right? But I know that there are new people coming into this world all the time. There's so many people and it's confusing. And I remember being new and I remember being frustrated by, the lack of information or people just being unwilling to describe things or really kind of lay it out and explain things. So I want to do that. I do that a lot on this channel. I've handled a ton of knives, ranging anywhere from about $5 up to about $5,000, and I've got about 1,400 uploads on this channel, and I've been collecting knives and buying and selling trading for about 10 years, so I have a decent foundation to talk about this. Thanks so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. If you'd like to check out my Patreon, get your hands on some cool stickers, there is, of course, a link right down in the description. You're supporting me in the world to me, and please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. I have a lot of knives laid out here. Some of them are actually, some of them are mine, some of them aren't, sent in by viewers for review and things like that. We're going to start off here with the term gentleman's folder. This is one of the most BS terms. Gentleman's folder could be referred to any traditional or classic folding knife like this little buck slip joint, right? Some people define it as that. Some people define it as just a really clean and simple aesthetic, like this QSP Penguin and micarta, right? A lot of people look at this, no, that's a utility knife. No, that's a tactical knife, right? You're going to have different people do. Gentleman's folder is a term that is really thrown around by companies and, trying to like appeal to a specific audience who's like, consider themselves really stylish and fancy. I wish you guys could see how I'm standing right now. And they want a knife to complete their, minimalist sort of general classy gentleman look, right? It's kind of a BS term. I don't really have anything out here that's going to really drive it home for a lot of people. But, a lot of your like newer style, like your modern slip joints that have like really minimalist blade finishes and handle finishes, but they just have that indescribable, X factor that just seems to go along with everybody's idea of the guy going to a reception and he's in suspenders and he's got a curly mustache, right? And it's like the stereotypical what do they call that? Hipster, right? Like a knife that he would carry, right? But the problem is that's a whole nonconformist community. So you get a whole bunch of different examples. There's a whole bunch of different stuff out there that'll, define itself as a gentleman's folder, when in fact it's just total nonsense. Sorry, I know that's going to make people mad. The whole gentleman's folder thing, I think, is complete nonsense. Don't get hung up on that. It doesn't mean anything. Some of these terms have to do with specific price tiers, and some of them don't, by the way, and I'll point it out. The next type of knife is a traditional knife. This is a much more factual, a much more, specific definition. A traditional knife is generally a pocket knife that is traditional, right? It can be a locking or non-locking knife, but generally they have an old school look about them. You're going to see, a lot like the Buck 110, or you're going to see old classic style slip joints. Some people are going to go, Buck 110's not a traditional, it's a traditional style knife. Lockbacks and slip joints generally that have, your wood and then your brass bolsters, right, or your nickel bolsters, things like that. Old school stuff with the nail nicks. That's a traditional knife, generally speaking. Now, there's a lot of different classifications of knives within the whole traditional field, right? But traditional specifically, generally refers to knives like that. Next up, we have a kind of a silly one, EDC. What are EDC knives? EDC just means everyday carry, right? It means a knife that you would carry every day, right? For some people, an EDC knife, right? A lot of the, like, when I talk about, and by the way, if I have links for some of this stuff, I will link these knives specifically down below. Some of these knives you can get and some of them you can't, right? This is a great example of what I would consider to be a general EDC knife. This is the Civivi Ortis. It's very inexpensive. It's about $40. Nice and lightweight. It's a knife that you can easily carry on your person every day, and it'll fit and, it'll be comfortable to carry in most, different types of pants, right? And it'll be very, welcome in different circumstances. It's just a lightweight, general use knife, right? Now, some people, EDC knives, right, if their day-to-day is different, right? If they're, going around doing crazy stuff with their knives, maybe they work outdoors, their EDC knife is going to be different. Maybe it's going to be bigger, maybe it's going to be more overbuilt, maybe it's going to be more, catered to their specific surroundings, right? So, you again, go down in the comment section and look. You're going to see, I define EDC as this. I define EDC as this. It's all different because we're all different people, right? We carry different knives every single day for different reasons. So EDC is not a specific class of knife. I know people are going to disagree with me there, but there's going to be too many different definitions. EDC means everyday carry. Whatever it is people are carrying every day, you can say anything is an EDC knife, right? Tactical. What is a tactical knife? Oh, I mean, it's one of the most ridiculous, a lot of people would say the Microtech SOCOM Elite is a tactical knife, right? Tactical. A lot of times you get a very military-esque look. Sorry, I'm down in the basement, so anytime anybody uses the water in this house, you hear the pipes behind me. But anyways, tactical knife, one that I guess my definition, of a tactical knife is one that deploys quickly, which is, you could say that about anything, right? Generally, we'll have like very, very specific lines to give you a tactical advantage, in a extreme scenario. What does that mean? I don't know. Ask a million different people, get a million different answers, right? A lot of people will say, they're more self-defense oriented, right? They're meant to, high speed, low drag, give you the best advantage in every conceivable circumstance, right? Make sure that you can hold on to it in a number of different areas, right? And you have a blade grind that is, strong and robust and dangerous and slicey and pointy and stabby and all that, right? It's all over the place. A lot of times, your tactical knives, right, when you hear the term tactical thrown a knife, it looks like something that might be used by law enforcement, military, ninjas, whatever. And I'm not making fun of the SOCOM Elite either. Actually, that's a great knife. It functions perfectly fine as a knife that you're going to use every day if you're going to do some hard use stuff, which we're going to talk about hard use, right? But it also is something that maybe an actual, somebody who's actually in law enforcement or the military would find advantageous in a number of circumstances they might find themselves in because they're in that profession, right? Now, I can't speak on that. I've never been a police officer. I've never been a soldier, right? I can't speak on that. But tactical is thrown around a lot. Like budget knives, they really exploit that. You go on, Amazon and kind of sketchy retailers sometimes, and you see knives in the $30 range, and they classify it as tactical. What does that mean? They're not going to tell you, but it sounds cool, right? And it's usually black and tanto and serrated. I wish I had that old piece of crap Smith & Wesson knife that I just verbally destroyed when I reviewed it. In this world nowadays, it doesn't mean very much. It's an attention grabbing term, right? So tactical, you can apply it to anything, right? A lot of different knives can be tactical in a lot of different situations. It is not tied to any specific tier of knife. Don't be fooled by that, right? Don't be fooled by the term tactical. You can find tactical knives that cost $1,000, and you can find tactical knives that cost $7. Doesn't mean anything. Tacticool. Tacticool or Mall Ninja knives. Yeah, I'm going to use this actually as an example for a lot of things. This used to belong to Nick Shabazz. These types of knives appeal to people who just have this childlike fascination with bladed objects and view them as weapons, not necessarily because they intend to use them that way, but just because it gives them the idea, right? Yeah, it's got two blades, so I'm in double advantage, right? No, it's just inconvenient and dangerous. Ridiculous blade. The rainbow coating, that's just ridiculous, right? My tactical rainbow coating. So when I'm, sneaking around in my, my ninja suit, right, trying to infiltrate the infiltrate the structure, right? That rainbow coating, yeah, that'll really, keep you hidden. Yeah, Tacticool, Mall Ninja, and gas station knives all kind of lumped together. Basically, what it means is super cheap, just slapped together, just garbage. If you collect stuff like this and you kind of know what it is and you just have a simple enjoy, okay, I get it. We all started out with stuff like this. When I was a kid, I loved stuff like this, right? But these are just junk knives, essentially. They're made to look flashy or appeal to people who are just fascinated with the bizarre, nature of this. And they're not made, they're just stamped and pressed on an assembly line in China, and they throw some, flashy colors on there, some weird shapes, right? And gas station knives oftentimes are similar. Oftentimes you'll see knives that have completely and totally unnecessary lines. It's very aggressive nonsense tantos and recurves and oftentimes weird compound stuff. And the handles it'll say like police or military or, firefighter, or it'll have like dragons or wizards and crap all over it. Yeah, it's all in the same category. It's just junk that is... It's got a blade and it's sharp, but it's not really made to be used. It's just something, that appeals to people who look for stuff like that and don't want to pay the money that it costs for a real knife, right? Sorry, that's the truth. It'll function for a little bit. The steel, you can sharpen anything that, that is made of metal, but how long it lasts, how resilient it is, how functional it is in different environments, none of that's taken into consideration with a lot of this junker stuff. It's just, it just looks neat to some people. Moving on here, let's talk about production, high-end production, and ultra high-end production. You're going to have a lot of different opinions here, but I'll give you a general sense of what that means. A production knife is any knife that is made by machine, right? Just produced. There's not really any hand elements in it. It's just put together by a machine that's guided by, nowadays a computer program, right? There's different, technically, like your gas station knives are technically production knives. They're 100% machine made. Then you have nicer stuff like the Civivi, right? This is kind of where nice production knives start, is your basic budget Civivi knives. These are excellent, right? It's a $40 knife. This is probably a $15 knife. Is it worth paying an extra $25 for something like this over something like this? Absolutely. This is way better, way more functional, way more ergonomic, right? Better geometry, more reasonable geometry for actual use. It's just nonsense. But anyways, yeah, there's your standard production knives, right? Anything that's, made by machine and produced. High-end production oftentimes refers to knives that have more premium materials. In this case, we have a Benchmade Mini Crooked River, right, in 20 CV, aluminum, and G10. More goes into this than in a Civivi knife, right? You're going to have different people arguing about whether or not they're worth the money, right? That's besides the point. A high-end production knife is one that there's simply more production that goes into it, generally more premium materials. Again, define that how you will. CPM 20 CV is generally referred to as a higher end material, right? They cost more money. They cost more money because they cost more to produce, right? Not every high-end production knife is going to be viewed as absolutely worth the money by everybody, but that's generally the case. Ultra high-end production is another step beyond that. That's generally refers to knives like Hinderer knives, Chris Reeve knives. You could say that about Strider knives. You could say that about Demco knives. These cost substantially more money. Generally, almost nothing is outsourced. Usually a lot of that is in-house. Now, while these are not, like the XM18, there's custom XM18s that Rick Hinder actually does, but we're going to talk about custom knives too. But your ultra high-end production knives usually hover around the $400-$500 mark. In some cases, we have some ridiculous, like knives that are still completely and totally production knives, but they cost substantially more. It just depends on how much goes into it. Way more work goes into an XM18 3.5 inch or a Demco 8020. That's why these knives cost anywhere from $400 to $600. There's just more time extensive or time laborious processes, right? A lot of times the tolerances are substantially better. I love Benchmade knives, but the tolerances and the fit and finish between a Benchmade and fit and finish between Civivi and, well, let's say Civivi versus Spyderco Benchmade ZT, generally speaking, these types of knives have much better fit and finish, much more complicated, intricacies that go into them. And then another step or 2 steps up between Benchmade and Hinderer knives. Still production knives, but substantially more goes into them. Lots of little teeny tiny things are smoothed out. Edges are knocked down. There's just more presentation. It's hard to, describe it, just looking, right? If you're just looking at a picture, right? But handling these things, it's much more apparent that, how much more goes into it. Again, are all ultra high-end production knives worth what they ask for them? It depends on the person, right? They factually cost more money to make, that's for sure. This costs way more to make than this or this. It just does, right? Whether or not it's worth the money, it's up to you. Personally, this is my comfort zone. Ultra high-end production and Midtech, which we're going to talk about. Yeah, I get the maximum enjoyment out of knives, generally speaking, between the $400 and $600 range. That's just me, right? Not everybody has to be at the same area in this whole knife enthusiast world. Moving on here, Midtech. What does Midtech mean? I think in this case, it's kind of this knife world has thrown a lot of interesting terms around since we used to have the simple days of production, Midtech, and custom. Right? It used to mean production, completely and totally machine made. Midtech, partially machine made and partially handmade, and then you had custom, 100% handmade. Nowadays, people use the term. Companies and knife makers will say custom when they mean it's partially handmade, partially machine made, but it's custom, right? They just decided to change the definition, or just decided to just wave off the definition that we all came to be used to, right? Midtech, generally speaking, or semi-custom means partially handmade, partially machine made. Is there a specific definition on how much it has to be handmade, how much it has to be machine made before you can classify it as Midtech, or where's the line, right? No idea. That's generally what Midtech. And I think that term was actually, I think the person who created the term was Ken Onion. So if you want to find the history on that, Google Ken Onion Midtech. I think there's something on Blade Forums about that where he actually speaks on Blade Forums and explains exactly how he came up with the term and why. Moving on here, I think we're going to, custom. Custom, again, custom knife, it should refer, now we have to say true custom. Now you see people throwing around terms like true custom because we've got knife makers, manufacturers, and people in the knife community using the term custom for knives that didn't used to be, labeled that way, right? So now people have to say true custom. So true custom, right? It means a knife that is completely and totally handmade, right? So people are going to, you're telling me the screws are handmade? Generally speaking, the hardware, right? The hardware could be anything from something that's made in-house by machine, and by the way, this is the Andre Thorburn L51. This is definitely what I'd consider a true custom knife. Almost completely and totally, I'm talking like 99% handmade. And this is a legendary knife maker. There's not too many people who would dare challenge, the Andre Thorburn's work, right? And whether or not it is actually classified as custom. Not trying to be a gatekeeper or elitist, but, I'll be honest with you guys, I was fairly unfamiliar with Andre Thorburn up until recently, but looking back at his history and who he is and what he's done, and handling that L51, that is the work of somebody who knows what they're doing and actually truly makes a handmade knife from the ground up. Now, there can be good custom knives like the Andre Thorburn L51, and there can be complete and total crap. Custom knife doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be ultra high quality. If you have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, or they're just kind of a novice and they create a knife from the ground up, like a handmade knife, it could end up being junk, but it's still a custom knife because they created it, They created the entire thing by hand. So that's what that means, right? Generally speaking, they're very, very expensive, right? Somebody making a fixed blade in their garage and they don't really know what they're doing and they're just they made like a little forge out of bricks and stuff. Maybe they make something good, right? Or maybe they just make some kind of whatever fixed blade. Yeah, so sometimes custom fixed blades from just people in their garage thrown together, maybe you can get a full custom knife for $100, right? But is there a difference between that and something like the Thorburn L51, right? Something that has a lot more work that goes into it? Yeah, definitely. A custom folding knife by somebody who's got, the legacy of Andre Thorburn, right? And who puts a lot more time and effort and has mastered their craft, that stuff's going to understandably cost way more. So just because Jerry down the street can make you a custom fixed blade for $100 out of his garage doesn't mean that a $1,000 custom knife is overpriced. No, that's not the case. People are going to argue with me. That's fine. I fully expect this video to stir up a big old firestorm of craziness in the comment section. Customized. Customized. What is a customized knife? The Benchmade Mini Crooked River from the Custom Shop is a customized knife. It technically is a custom version of the Mini Crooked River. Does that mean that it is the same definition as a custom handmade knife? No, not at all. It just means it's a knife that, it's a standard production knife that has been custom. Anything can, you can take any knife and customize it, and it's a customized knife. It doesn't make it a custom knife, right? Even if the customized elements were hand done, the knife itself is still a production Midtech knife or whatever knife it was originally that has been customized. You can't just fully change the classification of a knife, right? And what's my proof of this? Look at the value. When people try to put knives like that up for sale on Facebook or Reddit or the forums, right? They ain't getting their money back out of that. It's not going to be the case, right? People don't generally overpay for stuff like that. Not that this is entirely based on value. Moving on here, pocket jewelry. What does pocket jewelry mean? Pocket jewelry has no specific definition. It is not specific. A lot of people will say, well, it's a knife that's just fancy, right? It's not meant to be used, it's just fancy. It's just jewelry for your pocket. Anybody who's used to spending a certain amount of money, right, in a certain range, they look at a knife that's overpriced, by their definition of overpriced, is too much money for them to justify for what they're going to use it for. A lot of times they'll throw the term pocket jewelry at it, right? A lot of people, I've said multiple times when I show Hinder knives, every now and then I have people going, that's just pocket jewelry. No, the XM18 is not what I'd call pocket jewelry, right? I've got a definition of pocket jewelry, right? And it's basically just knives that I can't afford that I wouldn't use because they're too pretty, right? That's what that means. Every individual person, right? Whatever knife they would consider to be too expensive, too shiny, too pretty to use, right? They're gonna call that pocket jewelry, right? For some people, any knife that's like over $100 is pocket. I had somebody call the Spyderco PM2 pocket jewelry one time. I'm not kidding. I had somebody in my comment section call the Spyderco PM2 pocket jewelry. That's a nonsense term, right? Generally speaking, it's applied to very expensive knives that seem too pretty to be used, right? It's $900. It's somewhere, but I can't remember what the S90 is. Between $700 and $900, right? A lot of people would look at this and go, that's obviously not meant to be used. It's just pocket jewelry. It absolutely can be used. This thing is absolutely durable and capable. It's very expensive and takes an exotic form. But can you use it? Is it actually made with materials that are meant to be used? Absolutely! This is titanium and M390 and it's ground incredibly thin behind the edge. It's not going to be the most convenient item for every conceivable circumstance, right? But it is a functional tool. Whether or not people carry it or consider it too pretty to be used, that's an individual thing. It's not a universally applied term, right? You're going to get people disagreeing on that. Hard use. Oh, it's one of my favorite. Hard use. What is a hard use knife? Here's an example a lot of people would consider the Cold Steel SR1 Light a hard use knife. Generally speaking, big, robust, thicker than like the average person would consider, right? A thick blade stock to the average person. This is about 187 thousandths. Same thickness as the Demco 8020, the Direware, right? Blade stock. The thickness of stuff has nothing to do with how much it costs, right? You can get hard use knives that cost, $5,000, right? You can get a Medford Praetorian tie that's technically classified as a hard use knife, basically just incredibly thick and overbuilt and generally resilient to the types of things you'd throw at it, right? And you can get, like this SR1 Light made out of Grivery or injection mold plastic and HCR 13 MOV for $60, right? Generally speaking, very capable and robust lock, right? A lot of people say the Cold Steel Triad lock is the only lock that can be considered a hard use lock because blah. Most overbuilt most locking systems honestly are going to handle what most people can throw at them, right? The XM18 3.5-inch frame lock, You could definitely call this a hard use knife. Is the frame lock as strong as the triad lock? Probably not, but I mean, anything that you would throw at an XM18, right? This a general knife task, even if it's like continuous cutting or impact cutting over a long period of time, right? That lock is going to handle it, right? I would say, you know, here's what isn't a hard use knife: slip joints. It's easier to say what isn't a hard use knife than what is. The open L is not a hard use knife, right? I would say something like an inexpensive OTF is probably not a hard use knife, right? So the Lightning. If you're going to use a knife for some things outside of the realm of what's considered normal for a knife, right? What's considered normal for a knife in terms of use? General cutting tasks, just cutting things with the blade. If you're going to be doing weird things like, you know, you're going to be using the blade and kind of digging around, if you're going to jam the blade into something and kind of, you know, jam it into wood and kind of pry up little pieces of wood, if you're going to be prying up nails and stuff like that, is a knife meant to do that? No. But a more robust geometry, a more robust lock, a more robust frame is going to handle that a lot better than something like an open L. So hard use, nobody's going to be able to define that perfectly. A lot of people down there are going to be going, you know, hard use, the only true hard use blade is a fixed blade, right? If you're going to be doing stuff like that with your knife, you really should be using a fixed blade. Thanks. Most common thing that's ever been said. Thank you for informing nobody. Yeah, but you're going to have different definitions of hard use, right? They're just going to be all over the place. Don't get too caught up in that, right? If it's going to do the job for you, then it's fine. You don't have to classify it as anything. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, and it's certainly not tied to a specific price point. Or locking system, Cold Steel fans. It is not exclusively tied to a certain locking system. Last up, reason I have not had this knife out on the table that I'm going to use for this final example. And by the way, there are probably other terms that I missed, right? These are just the most common terms that are confusing or require maybe a little bit more discussion. The final term, the dreaded C word. Not what you're thinking. Clone. What is a clone? A clone is not just a knife that looks like another knife, right? People, you know, say, the Lightning is a clone of the Scarab. The Lightning looks kind of like the Scarab in the profile of the handle. The hardware is different. The texturing is different. The jimping is different. The firing switch is different. The blade shape, all the different blade shapes they have are different. The pocket clip is different. The back end of everything else is different. The only thing that's similar between this and the Scarab is the profile of the handle is kind of similar. This is not a clone of the Scarab. Even the dimensions are different. A clone is a knife that is actually meant to fool people into thinking it's the real thing. Let me be very clear about this. I do not like clones. I will never, ever review a clone on this channel. The reason that I waited until the end of this video to show the knife that I'm about to show is because I want to give it as little camera time as possible. Clones are made in a way that they cost less money because they want to appeal to people who really want the real thing but can't afford it, right? So they cut corners. Sometimes clones are more or less, there's more or less quality that goes into them, but generally speaking, you're never going to get the same level of quality or performance from a clone. You're not going to. The only people who are going to tell you that are people who just picked up the clone and go, yeah, this is good enough, right? Anybody who owns the real thing that has handled the clone of it will tell you, no, it's not the same thing, and I'm about to show you that here. So I have a buddy who told me, he was like, I loved Hinderer knives, but I just didn't want to buy the real thing, and I found one for way less money, so I went ahead and bought it, and it's okay. And I showed him, I was like, do you want to handle an actual XM18 so you know the differences? Because he told me, he's like, it looked exactly the same. And once I handed him the real thing, he was like, okay, yeah, this is completely different, right? That's hard, because some clones of knives cost, you're talking about knives that cost $30 or $40 versus, in the case of the Hinderer, these $400 to $600. These two $600 knives, right? I can understand why it's appealing. But if you're buying those knives, if you're buying clone knives, right, you're paying the company who stole the design from the actual designer, right? That's messed up. That's why I won't review them. And it's why I'm letting everybody know clones are junk versions of the real thing. This knife is a clone of an XM18, right? What is this? CTS/HP. That's nothing. What they tried to do was put CTS XHP on there, which was the steel that Hinderer used to use on some of their older XMs, right? This is trying to be an XM18, but it isn't. This is a fake one. This is a real one. Now, let's look here. The pivot, they tried. It's not the same thing. The screws, they tried. Not the same thing. Texturing, they tried. Not the same thing. I don't know what this is coated with, right? It probably is titanium, but in terms of, the actual Hinderer here, what we're looking at is a very shoddy, very just kind of like just machine done blade. I don't think this is actually CTS XHP. I think it's D2. I think people have actually proven that on whatever this is, right? And it's probably not heat treated correctly. The guy who uses it told me, he was like, it didn't stay sharp very long, right? The action is hilarious. This is just nothing compared to here's the real thing, and here's the clone. And here we go. Here's flipping action. This garbage, right? It's okay centered, but look, I mean, the tip is all wonky, right? Standoffs, nothing. Dimensionally, not the same. Blade stock thickness, not the same. They really tried here. This is based on the old custom Spanto grind, right? Flipper tab, just sharp and just dog crap. Look at that. You think this is sharp? People talk about the XM18 being sharp. This is junk. And here's the worst part. This is so wobbly. I wonder if you guys can hear this. Let me get it up next to I don't know if I'm going to actually... Oh, it disengaged. Yeah, no, this is so bad. The lock geometry is just ridiculous. It's so bad. There's literally, there's so much room here. I don't know if you guys can actually hear it. I'm trying to get it next to it's wiggling so much it's audible. Now, a lot of people would say, well, it's been used, right? That's why. No, it's wiggling because it's junk and they just slapped it together. Don't buy a clone. A clone is a cheap copy of the real thing. It's a great example of that awful piece of junk that I just showed. Don't do it, right? If you want the real thing, save up for the real thing. If you can't afford it, you feel like you're not going to be able to afford it, then just let it go and buy something else. There's a million good original designs out there. A million of them. Pick one that's within you. There are great knives to be had. Well, I would much rather, if these two cost the same, if this is a $40 knife and this is a $40 knife, screw this. Give me the Civivi. It's an original design. It's actually made well. They cared about it. They cared about lock face geometry, ergonomics, all these. They weren't just trying to copy something, right? Just make a cast of it and just sell it, right? No. The original is actually designed to be used, and they take all that stuff into consideration. The clone, they don't care. They're trying to make a quick buck, riding the coattails of somebody who's got a popular design. Spend money on something that's, reasonable and functional, and that, they cared about it, because this is literally dangerous to use. This is absolute junk. So that's what a clone is. I think I've covered all of the different terms that I wanted to cover. This was a long, rambly, crazy episode. I hope that this was helpful or informative to new people. I'm sure a lot of people are like, this guy's insane. This guy talked for 33 minutes, right? No editing. What's all one take? And giving his opinions. As per usual, these are my opinions, right? Based on my experience over the last 10 years or so. Trying to make this easier for people who are new. Like I said, a lot of these knives, everything that's not the clone will be listed down below, so you guys can actually pick up good knives. I'm not going to list this. This is garbage. But good knives that you can actually get, I'll list them down below. You can check the retailers or the individual links for a lot of this stuff, if it's available. But in any case, I hope you guys were at least mildly entertained by this. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody.